Welcome to the BADS Principles episode 2. Today we're going to be talking about GPP. What is GPP? GPP is defined as General Physical Preparedness. Now what does that mean? It's exactly what it sounds like. It is your general physical preparedness or your general physical fitness, if you wanted to think about it that way. Or in even simpler terms, how good or how bad a shape are you in? But if we're talking about a literal definition, the name of it is General Physical Preparedness. So that answers what is GPP. Then next, we need to talk about why should I worry about GPP? Well, I'll give you an example. Now, if you were an athlete playing a sport, you would think that, my general fitness doesn't really need to be good. The biggest thing nowadays is cardio. And as far as long distance running in a sport like baseball, where you would think it doesn't really make much sense and stuff like that. Now, GPP comes into play whenever you move from an off-season type training to an in-season type training, in my opinion. And this is for a sport athlete, not necessarily a powerlifter or a fighter or anything like that. This is talking more so a team sport athlete. Now, I can put this in an example for when I was playing baseball. When I was playing baseball, I was used to training. I would go to class and then train. I'd say I would lift in the off season from, let's say, noon to about 1:30, and then I'd get done with that, and then I would go hit from, say, 1:30 to 3 o'clock. Something along those lines. Let's say that's what I did. Now here's the thing. Here we've got about an hour and a half and an hour and a half. And now this is by myself, so that could also include time you're waiting around between sets, or you take a couple swings and then play on your phone for a minute, listen to some music, whatever, just dilly-dally in whatever way, shape, form. Now where GPP comes into this is what my body is trained for during the off season. Now that becomes a problem when I then get into a season. If I can make all this go away here. When I get into a season, and that then turns into noon to 12, nope, that's not what I wanted. Noon to 1:30 again. Lift, and this is by yourself, or even if we take it, let's take it even a step further. Let's say this is more of a college setting. Now all of a sudden we're turning this into a team lift with a tempo, because you've got a lot of guys in a team in the weight room at the same time, so it's going to be a much faster pace, much higher tempo. That's going to require your fitness to be much higher. And then that hour and a half lifting, you go to practice. So whereas before you were, you'd go and hit on your own, take a little bit of breaks. Now all of a sudden we've got a 4-hour practice that we have to go to. And this is nonstop, at least in my experience in college, was a nonstop boom, 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 one thing after the other. Now GPP comes to this again because my body is not ready to do this, and this is where I personally failed because I was not in physical shape for this. Now this is really confusing because at the time I was in physical shape to squat well over 400 pounds, but I didn't have enough general fitness to even make it through a simple practice. And for that specific reason, that is why I like to add this type of stuff into my programs. And then we move on to the question, how do I program GPP? Well, let's just go ahead and continue down the baseball route and think of this in the baseball perspective. I also think the GPP part of my programming, which also I should note is typically done in the warm-up, this is a place where I feel like things that need to be done can happen, but stuff that we don't necessarily want in our workout. Like it needs to get done, but it's not a huge priority that it absolutely has to be done during our workout. For example, in a baseball athlete, this could be something like anti-rotational strength. Now, I personally program stuff like anti-rotational strength with things like a pal-off press or something along those lines. Now, we could throw that into the GPP and basically use it as a warm-up, so that way it's getting trained, but at the same time, we're not losing time in our workout. Now, here I have an example of a GPP section for one of my athletes. And another important thing to note during this is that this is a fantastic place for building up your weak points. Now, for this guy specifically, he wanted to become faster and, or really bigger, faster, stronger. And as far as his lower body, he has relatively weak glutes, weak hips, and as for the upper body, he has a very weak upper back, and he's not real comfortable on a single leg. And in baseball, you do need to be able to operate in a single leg stance, given that the majority of the sport is done with one foot off the ground. So, the way we then take this into his program is this is essentially his warm-up here, or part of his warm-up, and we are now attacking all of these weak points. So in this, like I said before, his hips were weak, so we've got the hanging leg raise right here, and then we go directly into a face pull, so we're hitting that upper back weakness, a glute bridge, hitting the glute weakness, and then a weighted depth drop. I love depth drops. This is a whole nother subject, but I like depth drops done in the GPP because, in my opinion, it is a general thing. The whole basis of the depth drop and the reason why you want to do it is because, in theory, if you wanted to apply force, you must be able to absorb force. But again, we don't want to waste our time in a workout, so I like to put it here so we just knock it out and get it out of the way, because it is something that needs to be done. And then again, like I said, this athlete is not real comfortable on a single leg or in a single leg stance, so we have him doing single leg weighted depth drops also. And again, this is all just building up his weak points. And another important thing to note here is this is all done with no rest, essentially. Or not necessarily no rest, I should say more so with a tempo. And the reason for that is, again, to build up your aerobic capacity to be able to handle that 4-hour practice, because we don't want to get so used to just having the lifting session and then going off and doing our skill work and taking our own time, and then all of a sudden we're in a team setting and it's a shock to our system. That was another fantastic point, and another part that GPP, like I said, GPP is defined here as general physical fitness or general physical preparedness. So it's everything. So really, if we're taking it literally, the way that I program GPP is not actually, like, you can't really program GPP because it's just a thing. It's like trying to say you're programming fitness. I mean, obviously. But for sake of the conversation, another thing that does play into your GPP that I'm a huge fan of is just using tempo during your entire lift. Now, the way that this could look like, and some of my favorite methods to use for this are 1 minute, 1 minute sets, and 30-second sets. Now, we start off with here a 1 minute set. The way that this would be done is throughout the entire course of your workout, you would set a timer or a stopwatch. And so if I start the timer right now, I'm at 0 minutes and 0 seconds. I do my set and say I finish my set in 15 seconds. When that timer hits 1 minute, I'm going to start my next set. And if I get done with that set at 1 minute and 30 seconds, then I now have 30 seconds of rest until 2 minutes and I have my next set. And then in the same sense, you have the 30-second sets would be, I start a timer now at 0, 0, do my set in 5 seconds. Now I have 25 seconds of rest until I start my second set at the 30-second mark. Now the reason why this is good, again, is just building up that aerobic capacity, having that tempo, and just building, again, as simple as it sounds, your general physical preparedness. But that is why I like to add some stuff like this in, because I believe that this is a part of programming that is way overlooked and people really just don't even think about, and I myself didn't think about for a long time. But I like to use GPP because, or I take that back again, you can't use GPP. I like to think about GPP because not only do I want my athletes to thrive in the weight room alone, but I want them to actually be able to thrive on the field, because that is the goal of training. That is what is forgotten. The goal of training is to become better at your sport. And making sure we have a big focus on this right here, that will be a tremendous help in making sure we do
You can run on for a long time, run on for a long time.